Tonight, arrests in Hong Kong as people take to the streets to protest a new Chinese security law. How the United States is responding, and
I'm asking them for help because I'm homeless and they won't give me any help.
What the government is doing to protect the homeless population during the pandemic. Plus, the Senate extends the application deadline for the Paycheck Protection Program.
Pay our rent, our mortgage, our utilities, the things that don't go away.
The effect PPP loans are having on small businesses. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Hong Kong in chaos after China's latest effort to exert more control there. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, tensions run high tonight in Hong Kong after armed guards clashed with the largest protest there in months over mainland China's contentious new national security law that took effect today. Hundreds have been arrested. CBN's Abigail Robertson has been tracking the developments. Abigail, this new law is sending shockwaves through residents fighting to keep their independence.
That's right, John. This new law effectively strips Hong Kong residents of their freedom of speech and legal right to criticize Beijing's government. Yet today, thousands already defied it, taking to the streets to protest and risking life imprisonment. Police used water cannons to disperse crowds of protesters and arrested more than 300 people on the 23rd anniversary of the handover from Britain to China.
Yesterday, the Chinese Communist Party implemented its draconian national security law on Hong Kong in violation of commitments that it made to the Hong Kong people.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo blasted the Chinese government for turning Hong Kong into another communist-run city.
Security forces are already rounding up Hong Kongers for daring to speak and think freely. The rule of law has been eviscerated. And as always, the Chinese Communist Party fears its own people more than anything else.
The new law punishes crimes of secession, subversion, terrorism, or collusion with foreign forces.
Free Hong Kong was one of the world's most stable, prosperous, and dynamic cities. Now it will be just another communist-run city where its people will be subject to the party elite's whims.
In response, Pompeo says the U.S. is implementing visa restrictions on Chinese officials responsible for overturning Hong Kong residents' long-held freedom. And Britain also says it will extend residency to up to 3 million Hong Kongers. Back to you, John.
All right, Abby, and real quickly, a little bit of a hard turn before we let you go. We wanted to wish you and Derek all the best ahead of your due date this weekend. Just wanted to let you know that we're all wishing you well and praying for you.
Thank you. We are so excited for our baby girl. We can't wait for her to be here.
We are too. Well, take care. Thanks, Abby. Well, turning to the Middle East, no vote today on the plan to annex parts of the West Bank as had been scheduled. It comes on the heels of a meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, U.S. Ambassador David Friedman, and White House envoy Avi Berkowitz. Netanyahu had set today to begin voting on extending Israeli sovereignty over parts of the West Bank, also known as Biblical Judea and Samaria. The proposal is part of President Trump's Middle East peace plan.
With Avi Berkowitz and Ambassador Friedman and members of their delegation, I spoke about the question of sovereignty, which we're working on these days and will continue to work on in the coming days.
The peace plan was designed to allow Israel to extend sovereignty over 30% of the West Bank and leave 70% for a future Palestinian state. An Israeli-owned state-owned broadcaster released a new map showing areas to come under Israeli civil law. Although Netanyahu said the government would work on annexation in the days ahead, it is unclear how long it'll be until Israel actually moves ahead. Well, the Trump administration is complying with Congress's demand for more information on the alleged bounty of on American troops in Afghanistan. Tomorrow, the Gang of Eight, a bipartisan group of lawmakers, will be briefed and receive reports from the CIA Director Gina Haspel and Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe. Ahead of the briefing, President Trump doubled down, claiming this latest scandal is nothing but a hoax. Tweeting earlier, the Russian bounty story is just another made-up by fake news tale that is told only to damage me and the Republican Party. The president originally claimed he was never briefed on the matter because of the intelligence not being verified. Some experts, though, say that's unlikely and are calling on Congress to act.
Material of this nature with profound geopolitical implications, I have no doubt that that would make it to senior levels of Washington and indeed to the President of the United States. Democrats in the House of Representatives have subpoena power right now, and they can investigate this issue, and they should. Very serious questions. There should be briefings on the Hill, and because of the profound nature of the scandal, the public deserves to know what is going on as well.
White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany says there's still reservation among the intelligence community over the reported bounties, adding that the president will always work to protect American troops. Well, today is the first day of July, and typically by now the Supreme Court term would be over. But the court still has 8 big cases it has yet to rule on. Still on the docket this election year, a case involving whether the president can keep his financial records private, another one involving electoral college votes, a discrimination case asking if religious employers are allowed to fire at will, and the Little Sisters of the Poor, once again challenged the contraception mandate in Obamacare. This year marks the first time the High Court spilled over into July since 1996. The next round of rulings will be released on Monday. Well, tonight, an estimated 500,000 people are living on the streets of America, and that number is rising as the pandemic pushes people out of work. Joining me now is CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Ben, based on your reporting, many states like California are stepping up their efforts to house the homeless because of COVID-19.
Yeah, John, you're right. In fact, Governor Gavin Newsom shared that his state has housed more than 14,000 homeless people. And the good news about that is they don't have to leave, or most don't have to leave, that is, until there is a vaccine or treatment.
The U.S. faces its highest levels of unemployment since the Great Depression, forcing some on the streets. The pandemic has put 20 million out of work. While there are other causes, like mental illness or substance abuse, the challenge now is how to get them housed.
We worked with FEMA to develop a partnership under Project Roomkey that allowed us to move forward to procure hotel rooms, motel rooms like this here in Pittsburgh, where we can get people off the streets.
More than 14,000 rooms in nearly 300 hotels are now occupied by California's homeless.
To get homeless people off the street and into a temporary situation is what we need.
When I've asked my patients who live here whether or not they have a cutoff date as to when they're going to be kicked out, they said no, they're just told until COVID ends.
Infections are on the rise in 32 states, and the nation now has 40,000 new cases of the virus each day, though the death rate remains low.
Those are the kinds of things that we're seeing, people feeding others, finding ways to get food from farms where the food was just going to waste to people who actually need it. And, you know, when you really stop and think about it, what are Christians supposed to do?
We've been here for 25 years in the neighborhood. We've never left.
Reverend Matthew Barnett told CBN News they've been laser focused on combating the COVID threat, opening their multi-million-dollar property in the Golden State, which they used to help the homeless.
People thought we were crazy when we bought it because we had nothing. We had $50,000 in the bank, and we had a church of all homeless people. Like 80% of my church was homeless.
Nearly 20 years later, they're serving 2,000 hot meals each day to those in need.
550 beds dedicated to just homeless people that live here on this facility.
And Dan, looking out on the campus, I mean, this place is really a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
For the homeless.
Yeah.
They have a place to stay, they can get food, as well as ministry and help.
And I think the great thing about our programs in dealing with the homeless is that they're one-year programs. People need time to get their brain reprogrammed and get their lives together.
The U.S. economy shrank at a 5% rate in the first quarter alone. It is the sharpest decline in more than a decade, and that affects people's ability to pay their mortgage and even their rent. So you're going to see more states like California coming up with new ideas to step up and help those in need. John?
All right. Thanks, Ben. Why faith leaders are calling on Congress to send coronavirus aid overseas. More on that when Faith Nation returns.
Having sex before you're married is a bad idea. There's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Welcome back. CBN News has learned more than 24 faith leaders have sent a letter to Congress urging an increase in critical coronavirus funding to countries around the world. While lawmakers have approved $2 trillion to fight the virus, the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition says less than 1% of that money has gone overseas. CBN's David Brody spoke with the president and CEO of Catholic Relief Services about how to avoid an impending crisis.
Well, this is an important letter because it unites all the different faith-based communities here in the United States to push for international leadership regarding COVID. We've seen the tragedy that COVID has caused here in this country, and now, unfortunately, we're seeing it spike overseas as well. And these organizations reach out across the world. They reach out in the United States, but they also reach out across the world. And this is a plea to the leadership here in the United States and the global leadership to come together to address this COVID so that we can stamp it out once and for all.
I want to ask you a little bit about the metrics here in terms of where some of these funds are going to be used. I understand, in essence, faith leaders just asking for 0.1% regarding funds. So can you tell me a little bit more specifically about where this money will be used as it relates to COVID-19?
Sure. You know, in the scheme of things, if you look what was proved in the United States so far in response to COVID, it was over $2.8 trillion. We're now talking about between 12 and $20 billion, which sounds like a large number, but compared to the 2.8 trillion, it's a very, very small number. And really what it is if you compare to our response to Ebola, that dreaded disease that, you know, had hit Africa and hit Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, and is just now being extinguished in the Democratic Republic of Congo, we spent comparably, you know, for 3 countries, about $5 or $6 billion to take care of that. This is a worldwide pandemic, and it's one that not only are we responding to COVID, but we're also responding to what we call shadow pandemics. And what I mean by that is the estimation now of acute hunger in the world is that it's going to double this year. And so our teams are doubling the work that they're doing in many of these countries. So we're dealing with that. We're dealing with immunizations, and then we're dealing with malaria and HIV/AIDS. People can't get the treatment that they normally get. Kids are not going to school. They're not being fed. So we have a worldwide crisis that we, as a global community, will be paying for in years to come if we don't address it right now.
Sean, you know the deal. I can hear President Trump now saying, how is this going to make America great again? I mean, that's his whole mantra. That's his whole deal. He hasn't been a big fan of spending internationally as it relates to other presidents before him. So how do you do this exactly? In other words, what's the pitch to not just the administration, but to Congress as well about why this is important for America, not just for folks overseas as well.
Sure. You know, the first thing I would say is that the American population has always been very generous, and there's bipartisan support for humanitarian assistance. When people look out there and see children dying, families being torn apart, that's a key issue for Americans, and Americans don't allow that to happen. And so I think you're going to see great support for that. We've done some testing, and 4 out of 5 people say we need to provide that assistance. In addition to that, I think we all know that if people can't survive where they are, they're going to migrate. And if they migrate, they're going to go to where they think there is assistance. So one of the ways we can address the immigration issue and that we try to do is help people not to have to migrate. So provide people with the education, the healthcare, and the livelihoods where they are. So that's something for those who don't feel we need a lot more people coming to the country. This is one way. Another issue is the business issue that I mentioned just previously, and that is much of the U.S. economy now is a global economy and worldwide. Currently, we're having a great crisis in India. China had its blip before, and all of Africa. If we don't have those areas as markets, it's going to be tough for the American economy to really juice up and go.
You know, Sean, what struck me and what was very interesting to me is that if you look at this faith leader list, you see folks from a wide range of the faith spectrum. And you've got Ralph Reed and Russell Moore signing this letter. And Ralph Reed and Russell Moore don't typically agree on too much when it comes to the actual political issues of the day in terms of the Donald Trump agenda and what's going on politically in this country right now. So tell me a little bit about this, because it looks like the faith community is in essence speaking with one voice here.
You're exactly right, David. I think this is a great opportunity, because at a time where we don't see a lot of unity in our own country or in the world, here are the religious leaders saying, we have to step up. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder to show the leadership of the United States, to show the faith of the United States, and show the commitment of the United States to helping people globally and internationally. We believe that's going to make us better and stronger as a nation. And certainly we can help those other countries to be stronger and have that type of community that we would want to interact in as a country.
All right, thanks, David. Bailout or bust? Is the massive Paycheck Protection Program enough to save the economy? That story next.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the Home Front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
Well, welcome back. The Senate has extended the application period for small business loans known as the Payroll Protection Plan. In a surprise move, the vote happened just hours before it was set to expire. The application process will now remain open through August 8th. Right now, more than 4.8 million small businesses are utilizing the program, but is it too little too late? Caitlin Burke reports.
Economists predicted May would be the worst month for unemployment since the Great Depression. Instead, 2.5 million Americans got their jobs back. Lawmakers credit a massive government loan forgiveness program for helping to stabilize the economy.
Overall, the Paycheck Protection Program has been, in my opinion, an extraordinary success.
Still, the rushed implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program led to a flood of complaints from desperate small business owners unable to get the money. In early June, Congress pushed through new legislation to address some of the top complaints. The biggest changes? More time for recipients to spend the funds while remaining eligible for loan forgiveness, and more flexibility in using the money.
So the looser restrictions are great in a lot of ways. Now, instead of having to spend 75% on labor, we only have to spend 60%, which gives us the extra 40% for overhead to keep the business alive, pay our rent, our mortgage, our utilities, the things that don't go away.
For business owners like Scott Gilbert, who followed the original rules, it's too little, too late.
Because it took so long. Now, I am now in week 6 of the original 8-week term where they were, you meter out the money over 8 weeks. I was doing all that, so I have already at this point expended all 60%. There's no more money for labor. The sad reality is all of our full-time employees have now had to be laid off. We've had to lay off every single full-time employee to be able to have the remainder 40 to keep the business alive.
Another consequence of the initial legislation, laid-off employees found themselves making so much money from unemployment benefits that they've refused or been slow to return to work as their states reopen.
I have, 16-year-old high school girls that work on the floor or they work in the cafe. They make $100 a week. I mean, it's a high school level job, a few hours a weekend. They're now getting $700 a week from unemployment.
Mike Owen and a partner own several Great Clips franchise locations. It took more than a month to receive their initial government funding. During that time, they paid more than $400,000 of payroll out of pocket.
What we understood on March 23rd, when the governor put out the order that we were going to be closed, that the government was going to provide this PPP funding, and that the idea was to keep your employees employed and on the payroll. So we continued to pay them from the 24th of March on.
Their employees stayed off unemployment and are now willing to come back. But that initial $400,000 is not eligible for reimbursement.
A break-even year is not really what we're looking for right now. We're looking to have the ability to continue into next year and recover from that point.
Now, business owners face applying for the loan forgiveness, a process made much more complicated by the new law.
Just the interpretation of what's allowed and the time frames and what monies can be spent for what, we actually did go through with an attorney and our accountant to try to make sure that we are staying within those guidelines.
At a recent Senate hearing, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin told lawmakers that more help for small businesses will likely be needed, but it's important to take a measured approach.
We don't want to rush into that because we want to be both careful at this point in seeing how the money is in the economy. A lot of the money is still not in it. And two, I think we need to be much more targeted at this point. So I think at the point when we were in an emergency, we had to put a lot of money in the economy, and we knew that it would not be perfection. But I think whatever we do going forward needs to be much more targeted, particularly to the industries and small businesses that are having the most difficulty in reopening as a result of COVID-19.
Republicans say it's most important for states to continue to reopen so that Americans can get back to work, stimulating greater economic recovery. Small business owners are hopeful that if their doors are open, the people will come, and slowly things can return to business as usual. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. Coming up, we'll hear firsthand from a Wisconsin couple gaining fame for rescuing a bear in distress.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. Whoa! It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Hillsborough Falls man, come...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
And finally tonight, we end with a follow-up to that story we brought you yesterday about a bear. The Wisconsin family who rescued the struggling bear from a dreaded cheese ball container is speaking out about the ordeal.
That was the thing that I remember the most, is that bear panting heavily trying to get air. You imagine having that down in the water, it sealed it off so it couldn't get fresh air into that jug. And I'm thinking, we don't do something very quickly, this bear's going to become exhausted and drown. I was able to grab on, and I dug on for dear life. We actually followed it all the way up until it got to shore, and it climbed up on shore, and we saw it go up through the grass and into the brush a little bit, and then we heard it fall and collapse and on shore, so I knew it was safe at that point.
The Wisconsin family says once they freed the bear, they were clearly able to see the Cheesy Balls label on the container, saying if you're from Wisconsin, you know exactly what Cheesy Balls are. And good for that bear that family was there. Well, thank you so much for watching Faith Nation. We hope to see you again tomorrow.